Chapter 23. Who is Mr. Pym? When Alexander Shcherbakov arrived in the United States in the summer of 1981 with his wife Malvina, he was not yet 30, a very junior KGB counterintelligence officer in the Soviet Embassy in Washington. He served in the embassy for 4 years, until May 1985, at first under cover with the title of Third Secretary and Vice Consul. Near the end of his tour, he was upgraded to Second Secretary and Consul. Valentin Akselienko, a senior KGB spy in the embassy, knew Shcherbakov and overlapped with him for several months from August 1981 to the following summer. "I knew him," he said. "He was in KR, counterintelligence. I was PR, political intelligence. He was a novice in the station. He was a newcomer. It was his first foreign tour as far as I remember. He did not do any spectacular work. His wife was unusual because she was from a national minority in Russia. He was a lean guy. His voice was penetrating, and he was good in one-on-one conversation. He was very polite, showed respect to older people. He tried to keep good relations with everyone. He knew how to get along. In those days, Yakushkin was still the resident." In a kind of inverse logic, Shcherbakov, although a very junior officer, was assigned to the most difficult targets. Penetration into the CIA and FBI was next to impossible, Akselienko said. Shcherbakov, being younger, would have CIA and FBI targets. Because there were low expectations of success, the targets were the least important. According to Akselienko, the important targets were the White House, State, the Pentagon, the military-industrial complex, and NSA. Mine was the White House. While in the Washington Residentura, Shcherbakov played a minor supporting role in the John Walker case. John A. Walker, Jr. headed a family ring of Navy spies who sold U.S. Navy codes to the KGB. Walker had spied for the KGB for 18 years. He recruited his son Michael and brother Arthur and a close friend, Jerry A. Whitworth, to help him. Walker was arrested in May 1985, pleaded guilty, and was sentenced to life in prison. He died there in 2014, at age 77. On May 19th, Walker had left a 7-Up can as a signal to the Russians near Poolesville, Maryland, a rural area outside of Washington, D.C. Alexei G. Tkachenko, Walker's KGB case officer, was spotted in the area. Walker left a shopping bag full of 129 classified Navy documents on a country road nearby. Hours later, on May 20, 1985, the FBI arrested Walker in the middle of the night at a motel in Maryland. A few days later, on May 23rd, Shcherbakov and 2 other Soviet embassy employees escorted Tkachenko, his wife Olga, and 2 daughters to National Airport. The Tkachenko's boarded a plane to Montreal and then an Aeroflot flight to Moscow. They seemed to have left in a hurry. The FBI found a half-cooked hamburger in a frying pan on the stove. His tour over, Shcherbakov went back to Moscow in 1985, the same year that half a dozen espionage cases, including Walker's spy ring, exploded in the U.S. Back at KGB headquarters, Shcherbakov's star rose quickly. His mentor and protector, his Hosien, was Viktor Adrianov, the chief of the American Department of Directorate K, the KGB's counterintelligence arm at headquarters. In the lexicon of the KGB, when officers in Directorate K were assigned overseas, they were said to work in Line KR, or counterintelligence. It was there, in the Counterintelligence Directorate at KGB headquarters, that Shcherbakov had intimate access to the file of the unidentified mole inside U.S. intelligence. But unknown to his SVR superiors, Shcherbakov meticulously and secretly copied into his personal notebook all of the titles of the documents the mole had provided to Moscow. In his tiny handwriting, it was all there, every detail. Later, his mentor Andrianov became head of Directorate S, which trained illegals to be sent abroad, and he brought Sherbakov with him. As Sherbakov rose within the hierarchy, he became a colonel and deputy director of the Illegals Directorate. He was on the list to be promoted to general, but Sherbakov had other plans. He left the SVR in 1995, removing the rest of the file that would make him a millionaire, and headed for his mother's garage. His colleague, Valentin Akselienko, had worked as a senior officer in the Washington Residency of the KGB for 6 years before he returned to Moscow in 1982. In 1993, he agreed to help Yuri B. Shvets, another former KGB agent, write a book on Shvets's experiences in the Washington Residentura. Shvets had been posted to Washington for 2 years in the mid-1980s, undercover as a TASS correspondent. Both men later emigrated to the United States. In the summer of 1999, Sherbakov had approached Akselienko for his help on a business deal. Sherbakov was in Moscow and contacted Akselienko at his home in the U.S. Sherbakov talked enthusiastically about exporting rugs, caviar, and artifacts. They exchanged faxes, but the business arrangement they entered into did not produce results. It seemed to be how all of Sherbakov's ventures ended. A year later, Sherbakov was lured to New York and met Bill Stout to talk about exporting artifacts. Then Stout vanished, and Mike Rochford appeared in his place. To the FBI, Sherbakov was now Mr. Pym. Although he was furious at first at having been tricked, it was after several days in New York that Mr. Pym finally decided he had something far more valuable to sell than little wooden boxes decorated with Russian fairy tales.